I am Amber, 32 years old and a journalist who spent my entire life trying to earn my mother Eleanor's approval. The birthday dinner she insisted on throwing at that fancy restaurant was supposed to be different. I arrived full of hope, wearing my new dress and brightest smile. But when I asked where I would sit at the fully occupied table, my mother smirked and said those words I will never forget. I had no idea that night would change everything. Where are you watching from today? Hit subscribe and join me as I share how I finally stood up for myself. Growing up as Eleanor Wright's daughter meant living in a perpetual state of emotional drought. My earliest memories involve my mother finding creative ways to humiliate me in public while maintaining her image as the perfect parent. At family gatherings, she would introduce my sister Rachel as my talented daughter and me as my other daughter with a dismissive wave. During school events, she would loudly critique my appearance or performance while other parents offered their children encouragement. Rachel was 5 years older, beautiful, and compliant, everything I apparently was not. While my sister received new clothes and lavish birthday parties, I got hand-me-downs and small celebrations that often felt like afterthoughts. "We cannot afford to spoil both of you," my mother would say, though somehow there was always money for Rachel's dance lessons, summer camps, and later, college tuition. Despite the constant comparison and criticism, I managed to excel academically. Words became my refuge and journalism my passion. I worked multiple jobs to put myself through state college when my mother refused to help with tuition. "Journalists barely make minimum wage," she scoffed when I declared my major. Rachel chose accounting. Now that is a respectable career. After graduation, I started at a small local paper, covering everything from city council meetings to high school sports. Those first years were grueling, long hours, minimal pay, and continued dismissal from my family. "When are you going to get a real job?" became my mother's standard greeting. Even landing a position at the city's major newspaper did little to change her perception. Over the past decade, I built my reputation as an investigative journalist piece by piece. My colleagues respected me, and my name began appearing on significant exposés. 3 months before my 32nd birthday, I broke my biggest story yet, uncovering a pattern of safety violations and worker exploitation at Meridian Manufacturing, one of the largest employers in our state. The investigation took nearly a year, involved dozens of interviews with whistleblowers, and resulted in federal investigations into the company. The story made waves across the industry, earned me a nomination for a prestigious journalism award, and even brought attention from national news outlets. My editor, Michael Barnes, a gruff veteran reporter who rarely offered praise, actually called my work damn fine journalism. For the first time in my career, I felt like I had truly accomplished something meaningful. My extended family had always followed my mother's lead in their treatment of me. Aunts, uncles, and cousins from both sides maintained a polite distance, never overtly cruel, but clearly understanding the family hierarchy. Only my cousin Kate ever made real efforts to connect with me independently of family gatherings. She would send texts checking in or meet me for coffee when she could do so without my mother knowing. Despite years of therapy helping me understand the toxic dynamics at play, some childish part of me still hoped that this professional breakthrough might finally earn my mother's respect. During our monthly phone call, brief, strained conversations I maintained out of some sense of obligation, I mentioned the story's publication. "That is nice, dear," she said with the same tone she used when I made honor roll in high school. "Did you know Rachel just got promoted to senior financial analyst?" Still, in the weeks following the story, something seemed to shift. My mother called twice unprompted, asking about my newspaper work with what sounded like genuine interest. When my birthday approached, she insisted on planning a celebration. "You are turning 32, after all," she said, as though this particular birthday held special significance. "I want to do something nice for you. Let me handle everything." Her enthusiasm was so unusual that I felt a flutter of hope. Perhaps the public recognition had finally made her see me differently. Maybe, after all these years, we could build some kind of real relationship. I agreed to let her plan the dinner, ignoring the warning signals from both my therapist and my own instincts. Just be careful with your expectations, Dr. Marshall cautioned during our session the week before the birthday. People with narcissistic tendencies rarely change fundamentally, even if their behavior sometimes shifts. I nodded while thinking, but what if she has changed? What if all she needed was to see that I could be successful on my own terms? That desperate hope for maternal approval, despite decades of evidence that it would never come, led me to accept her invitation. It would be a dinner at Bellamy's, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city, the kind of place my mother loved for its status value. She mentioned she had invited a few family members to join us. Nothing extravagant, she assured me. Just a small gathering to celebrate properly. I wanted so badly to believe her that I ignored every red flag waving frantically before me. The day of my birthday started with unusual optimism. I had taken the full day off work, something I rarely did, to prepare for the evening. Though I tried to temper my expectations, I could not help feeling that tonight might represent a turning point in my relationship with my mother and, by extension, the rest of my family. I spent the morning answering birthday messages from colleagues and the few close friends I had managed to make despite my workaholic tendencies. Michael sent a text that simply read, "Happy birthday, kid. Don't check your email today. That is an order." I smiled, knowing he was one of the few people who genuinely supported my career and personal growth. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a message from Eleanor, reservation at Bellamy's at 7 o'clock. Wear something appropriate. No, happy birthday, no warm wishes, just instructions. I pushed down the familiar disappointment and focused instead on the evening ahead. I had purchased a new dress for the occasion, a deep emerald green that complemented my auburn hair and brought out the green in my hazel eyes. It had cost nearly half my monthly clothing budget, but I rationalized that this special occasion warranted the expense. I booked an appointment at a salon downtown for a blowout, something I never indulged in normally. As the stylist worked on my hair, I scrolled through the flood of birthday messages on social media, noting the absence of posts from any family members except Kate, who had sent a sweet private message and a digital gift card to my favorite bookstore. "Special occasion tonight?" the stylist asked, noticing my unusually fancy preparation. "Yes. A birthday dinner with my family at Bellamy's," I replied, unable to keep the pride from my voice. Bellamy's was notoriously difficult to get reservations for, and my mother must have pulled strings to secure a table, especially for a group. "Wow, fancy. Someone really wants to make your birthday special." I smiled and nodded, allowing myself to believe that might actually be true. Back at my apartment, I took care with my makeup, aiming for polished but not overdone. The dress fit perfectly, and I added a simple gold necklace, a gift I had bought myself after my first major story was published. Looking in the mirror, I barely recognized the confident, professional woman staring back at me. At 32, I had built a life and career I was proud of, regardless of my mother's approval. As I drove to the restaurant, light rain began to fall, casting the city in a soft, reflective glow. I arrived 15 minutes early, not wanting to give my mother any reason to criticize my punctuality. The valet took my modest sedan, conspicuously less luxury than the other cars in the line, and I stood under the restaurant's awning for a moment, gathering my courage. Bellamy's interior was exactly as I imagined: soft lighting from crystal chandeliers, pristine white tablecloths, waitstaff moving with choreographed precision between tables. The maitre d' greeted me with practiced warmth. "Good evening, madam. Do you have a reservation?" "Yes, under Wright. Eleanor Wright." He consulted his tablet and nodded. Yes. The Wright party. They have already been seated. Please follow me." My heart rate quickened as we weaved through the dining room. Already seated? I was 15 minutes early. As we approached a large round table in the back of the restaurant, I spotted not just my mother and sister, but what appeared to be our entire extended family. My mother's 2 sisters and their husbands, my father's brother and his wife, Rachel and her husband Thomas, and 4 cousins including Kate, who looked uncomfortable. 12 people. all dressed immaculately, all with drinks and appetizers already served, all turning to look at me as I approached. I did a quick count of the chairs, 12. Exactly matching the number of people already seated. My mother rose slightly from her chair, her signature false smile firmly in place. She wore an expensive black dress I had never seen before, her blonde hair perfectly coiffed, diamonds glittering at her ears and throat. "Amber, darling, you finally made it," she said, though I was still 10 minutes before the reservation time. "Hello, everyone," I managed, suddenly feeling overdressed and underdressed simultaneously. "Thank you for coming to celebrate with me." Murmured greetings and raised glasses met my words, but no one moved to make room at the table. I stood awkwardly at the edge, waiting for someone to address the obvious issue. "Mother, I think there has been a mistake," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice from wavering. "There does not seem to be a place for me." Eleanor's smile did not reach her eyes as she looked up at me. "No mistake, dear. Where would you like to sit?" I glanced around the table again, confirming what I already knew. There were no empty chairs. The server who had followed behind me stood silently, clearly sensing the tension, but professionally pretending not to notice. I don't understand," I said, heat rising to my cheeks as I became aware of nearby diners glancing curiously in our direction. "Did you not make the reservation for 13 people?" My Aunt Vivian tittered nervously while Uncle Robert suddenly became very interested in the bread basket. Rachel would not meet my eyes, focusing intently on her wine glass instead. I looked back at my mother, whose expression had transformed into one I knew all too well, satisfaction mixed with cruelty. The look she wore when executing a particularly effective public humiliation. "Mother," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "where am I supposed to sit?" "The floor suits you best, dear," Eleanor said, her voice carrying just enough to reach nearby tables. Her perfectly manicured hand gestured dismissively toward the space beside her chair. "After all, that is where you have put this family with your little newspaper crusade." The silence that followed seemed to stretch for an eternity, though it probably lasted only seconds. I stood frozen, unable to process that this was actually happening, that my own mother had deliberately orchestrated this public humiliation on my birthday. Then came the laughter, first a snicker from Uncle Robert, then an undisguised guffaw from my cousin James, until half the table was laughing openly. The other half had the decency to look uncomfortable, though not uncomfortable enough to object. "I don't understand," I repeated, my voice sounding distant even to my own ears. Eleanor's smile sharpened as she leaned forward. "Let me explain it clearly then. Your so-called journalism has embarrassed this family. Philip Meridian has been a friend of our family for 3 generations. His wife sits on the same charity boards as me. Do you have any idea how difficult it has been to show my face at events since your little expose?" My sister Rachel finally spoke up, though not in my defense. "Amber, did you even think about how your story would affect the rest of us? Thomas's firm does accounting for Meridian subsidiaries. They have lost 2 clients because of the association. People have been exploited," I said, finding my voice at last. "Workers have died because of unsafe conditions that the company covered up. Are you saying your social discomfort matters more than that?" "Always so dramatic," my mother sighed, lifting her wine glass for a delicate sip. "This is exactly why we could never take you anywhere important. No sense of decorum or family loyalty." My mind flashed back to my 10th birthday party, when Eleanor had invited my entire class, but then told me I could not have any cake because I had forgotten to make my bed that morning. I remembered standing in the corner watching my classmates enjoy my birthday cake while my mother explained to the other parents what a valuable lesson in responsibility I was learning. I thought of my high school graduation, where she had loudly commented on how my honor sash would look better if I had put down the books occasionally and learned about proper diet and exercise. Of college move-in day, when she had pointed out every imperfection in my appearance to my new roommate within minutes of meeting her. A familiar burning sensation began behind my eyes, but I refused to give her the satisfaction of my tears. "Not this time, not ever again." "This was your plan all along," I said quietly, the pieces falling into place. The sudden interest in my work, insisting on planning this dinner, It was all leading to this moment, wasn't it? Now, Amber, my Aunt Patricia interjected with forced lightness. Your mother went to a lot of trouble to arrange this lovely dinner. Can you take a little joke? A joke, I repeated flatly. I see. And you all knew about this? Kate was the only one who looked genuinely distressed, her eyes silently pleading with me. The others either avoided my gaze or, like my mother, stared back with varying degrees of amusement and challenge. The Meridians are important people in this community, Eleanor continued, clearly enjoying having an audience for her performance. More important than some sensationalist story designed to get you attention. But then, you always did go to inappropriate lengths to make yourself the center of attention, didn't you? That is rich coming from you, I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Excuse me. My mother's eyes narrowed dangerously. I said, that is rich coming from you. Everything has always been about you, your reputation, your social standing, your feelings. Even my birthday dinner is actually about you. Eleanor's face hardened. If you are going to be ungrateful. Ungrateful. I laughed, a short, sharp sound entirely devoid of humor. For what exactly should I be grateful, Mother? For being invited to a dinner where I'm not even given a seat? For being humiliated in public on my birthday? Or should I go further back? Should I be grateful for a lifetime of criticism and emotional neglect? Now you are just being ridiculous, my sister Rachel cut in. Mother has always done everything for us. For you, perhaps, I replied without looking at her. But that is not why we are here tonight, is it? We are here because I dared to write a story that made Mother socially uncomfortable. By now, diners at nearby tables had abandoned any pretense of not listening. The server had discreetly backed away, apparently having gone to find a manager, who was now approaching with concern etched on his face. Is everything all right here? He asked, directing the question at me rather than the seated party, a small kindness I would remember later. Before anyone could respond, I straightened my shoulders and found a smile from somewhere deep inside. Everything is fine, thank you. I was just leaving. Amber, don't be childish, my mother hissed, her public mask slipping as she realized I might actually walk away. Sit down and stop making a scene. I looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. I saw not the intimidating figure who had dominated my entire life, but a petty, insecure woman whose power existed only because I continued to give it to her. There is nowhere for me to sit. Remember? I said calmly. Besides, I suddenly find I've lost my appetite. Enjoy your dinner, everyone. Consider it my birthday gift to you. With that, I turned and walked toward the exit, holding my head high as I felt the stares of other diners. The maitre d' caught my eye as I passed, and something in my expression must have conveyed my distress because he quietly said, I will have your car brought around immediately, miss. Thank you, I managed, the simple kindness from a stranger nearly breaking my composure. As I waited under the awning for my car, I heard footsteps behind me and tensed, expecting my mother or perhaps Rachel. Instead, it was Kate, looking breathless and upset. Amber, I swear I had no idea, she said in a rush. Aunt Eleanor told everyone it was a surprise party. I only found out what was happening when you arrived. It is fine, Kate, I said, though nothing was fine at all. It is not fine. It was cruel and I should have said something. The valet pulled up with my car and I fumbled for a tip with slightly shaking hands. I need to go, I told Kate. Just go back inside before she comes looking for you. What are you going to do? Kate asked, concern evident in her voice. I paused with my hand on the car door. I don't know yet. But something has to change. As I drove away from the restaurant, the rain had intensified, matching the storm building inside me. Tears threatened. But I held them back through sheer force of will. I would not cry over Eleanor Wright ever again. The drive home passed in a blur. Traffic lights smeared into streaks of color through my windshield as I fought to maintain my composure. I had been conditioned since childhood to hold my emotions in check. Right women don't make spectacles of themselves, Eleanor would say. Usually right before or after she created a spectacle using me as her prop. Inside my apartment, I kicked off my heels and sank onto the couch, still wearing my beautiful green dress that no one had complimented. The silence enveloped me like a protective blanket, and for several minutes I just sat there, breathing and processing what had happened. Then my phone began to buzz with incoming messages. Rachel, you always were so sensitive. Mother went to a lot of trouble to arrange that dinner. The least you could have done was take the joke gracefully. Aunt Patricia, dear, family gatherings are about compromise. Eleanor has her ways, but she loves you. Please come back to the restaurant. Uncle Robert, your mother is very upset. Call her and apologize. Their messages confirmed what I had always known but tried to deny. I was expected to accept any treatment, endure any humiliation, and still respond with gratitude. The family system demanded my compliance, not my well-being. Only Kate's message struck a different note. I am so sorry, Amber. What happened tonight was wrong on every level. I told them so after you left. Call me if you need to talk. As the night wore on, the messages grew more insistent, then accusatory, then dismissive. Aunt Vivian, always the drama queen, running away instead of taking a joke. This is why Eleanor worries about you. Rachel, Mother is considering canceling the rest of dinner because of your behavior. Thanks for ruining everyone's night. Uncle Robert, your selfishness has upset your mother to the point of tears. I hope you're satisfied. Around midnight, a final text from my mother arrived. When you are ready to apologize for embarrassing the family, you know my number. I set my phone down and walked to the bathroom, where I carefully removed my makeup and changed into comfortable pajamas. The woman in the mirror looked different somehow, older perhaps, but also clearer, as though a veil had been lifted. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay awake replaying not just the evening's humiliation, but a lifetime of similar moments, some subtle, some overt, all designed to keep me in my assigned place. By morning, I had reached a decision that felt less like a choice and more like an inevitable conclusion. Over coffee, I began systematically blocking my family members on my phone and social media, all except Kate. My mother first, then Rachel, then aunts, uncles, cousins. With each block, I felt a strange mixture of grief and liberation. My phone rang. Michael from the newsroom. I almost sent it to voicemail before remembering that work represented the life I had built for myself, separate from my family's dysfunction. Hey, Michael, I answered, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Just checking you're still alive after your birthday celebrations, he said gruffly. And reminding you about the follow-up meeting on the Meridian story this afternoon. I'll be there, I promised, an idea beginning to form. After the call, I opened my laptop and searched for therapists specializing in family trauma and estrangement. Dr. Marshall was helpful, but I needed someone specifically experienced in cutting contact with toxic family systems. I found Dr. Lydia Sanchez, who had written articles on the subject, and sent an email requesting an urgent appointment. By noon, Dr. Sanchez had responded with an opening for the following day. I confirmed immediately, then spent the rest of the morning cleaning my apartment with almost manic energy, scrubbing surfaces, organizing drawers, removing old photos from frames. Physical cleaning as external representation of the internal cleansing I was undertaking. At the afternoon meeting, I focused intently on the Meridian follow-up story, suggesting angles and sources with unusual intensity. If Michael noticed anything different about my demeanor, he didn't mention it, simply nodding with approval at my ideas. There are rumors of shell companies and some interesting financial maneuvers, one colleague mentioned. Might be worth digging into who really profits from Meridian's practices. I nodded, thinking of my mother's comment about Philip Meridian being a family friend for generations. What exactly was the nature of that friendship? Was it purely social, or was there more to it? After the meeting, Michael held me back. Everything okay, Walker? You seem, I don't know, different today. I'm fine, I said automatically, then reconsidered. Actually, no. I had a family situation yesterday that made me realize some things need to change. But I'm handling it. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. Your work isn't suffering, that is for sure. If anything, you seem more focused. But if you need anything, I know. Thanks, Michael. The next day, sitting in Dr. Sanchez's office, I recounted the birthday dinner disaster and the lifetime of emotional manipulation that had preceded it. The therapist listened without interruption, occasionally making notes. "What you're describing is a classic narcissistic family system," she said when I finished. "Your mother as the central figure, your sister as the golden child, and you as the scapegoat. The extended family members serve as enablers, reinforcing the dynamic." "So I'm not overreacting by cutting contact?" I asked, still wrestling with guilt despite my determination. "Amber, based on what you've described, establishing firm boundaries, including no contact if necessary, is not only reasonable but potentially essential for your psychological health. The question is, are you prepared for the consequences?" "What consequences?" "Flying monkeys," she said with a wry smile. "It is a term we use in the field. When someone removes themselves from a narcissistic system, the narcissist often sends others, family members, friends, even colleagues sometimes, to try to pull them back in. There will be guilt trips, accusations, possibly even threats. Are you ready for that?" I thought about it. I think I have to be. The alternative is going back to the way things were. And I can't do that anymore. Dr. Sanchez nodded. "Then let's talk about practical strategies for maintaining these boundaries while you continue healing." Over the next few weeks, I implemented the plan we developed. I maintained my block on family members' numbers and social media, with Kate as my only connection to that world. I focused on self-care in ways I had always dismissed as indulgent before: proper meals, regular exercise, adequate sleep. Even occasional social outings with colleagues who were slowly becoming friends. The flying monkeys arrived right on schedule. Emails from aunts and uncles expressing concern about my mental health. A letter from Rachel suggesting I was destroying mother with my selfishness. An unexpected visit from Uncle Robert to my office, which security fortunately prevented when I refused to see him. Through it all, I maintained my focus on work, particularly the follow-up investigation into Meridian Manufacturing. Something about my mother's reaction to the original story kept nagging at me. Her concerns seemed excessive even for someone worried about social standing. There was something more there, something personal. During one of our sessions, Dr. Sanchez asked a question that crystallized my thinking. "You mentioned your mother referred to Philip Meridian as a family friend for generations. What exactly do you know about that relationship?" The truth was, very little. I knew my grandfather had done business with Meridian's father decades ago, but the specifics had never been discussed in my presence. That evening, I began researching my own family with the same diligence I would apply to any investigative story. What I discovered would change everything. The newsroom had always been my sanctuary, the place where I felt competent, respected, and in control. In the weeks following my birthday disaster, I threw myself into work with unprecedented intensity, arriving early, staying late, and pursuing leads with a focus that even Michael noticed. "Whatever family drama lit a fire under you." "I'm not complaining about the results," he commented one evening, finding me still at my desk long after most colleagues had gone home. "But remember to come up for air occasionally, Walker." I nodded absently, my attention fixed on the financial records spread across my desk. The follow-up investigation into Meridian Manufacturing had expanded beyond safety violations into murky financial territory. Shell companies, offshore accounts, unusual patterns of investment and divestment. The corporate structure resembled a labyrinth deliberately designed to obscure. "I think there's something bigger here," I told Michael during our weekly check-in. The safety violations were just symptoms of a company cutting corners anywhere they could. The question is why? Meridian is profitable on paper. "Unless the paper lies," Michael said, tapping his pen thoughtfully against his notepad. "Follow the money, Walker. It's still the best advice in investigative journalism." Following the money led me down an unexpected path, one that intersected with my personal life in ways I hadn't anticipated. Late one night, cross-referencing investor lists with property records, a familiar name jumped out at me: Wright Holdings, LLC. My heart rate accelerated as I dug deeper. Wright Holdings owned significant shares in 3 of Meridian's subsidiary companies, the same subsidiaries implicated in the worst safety violations. The LLC was registered to a P.O. box I recognized as one my mother had used for business correspondence for years. The discovery left me breathless. My mother wasn't just socially connected to Philip Meridian, she was financially invested in his company. The righteous indignation she had displayed at my birthday wasn't just about social embarrassment. My reporting had potentially impacted her financially. Sleep eluded me that night as ethical questions swirled through my mind. Did my personal connection to Meridian through my mother create a conflict of interest? Should I recuse myself from further reporting on the story? Or did I have an obligation to follow the evidence wherever it led? The next morning, I requested a private meeting with Michael and our paper's legal counsel, Diane Levine. I've discovered something concerning, I began, after laying out the basic facts of my investigation. One of Meridian's investors appears to be my mother. Michael's eyebrows shot up. Your mother is invested in Meridian? Did you know this when you wrote the original exposé? No, I said firmly. I had no idea until last night. My mother and I were not close. She never discussed her investments with me. Diane leaned forward, her expression serious. This creates a potential conflict of interest going forward, though it doesn't invalidate your previous reporting since you were unaware of the connection. I know, I acknowledged. That's why I wanted to discuss it immediately. Should I recuse myself from the investigation? Michael and Diane exchanged glances. Not necessarily, Diane said carefully. But we need to establish some safeguards. You should not be directly involved in any reporting specifically about your mother's investments. Another reporter should verify and write those portions. I agree, Michael added. Your work on this story has been solid, Walker. I don't want to pull you completely, but we need to be above reproach ethically. Relief washed over me. I could continue the investigation while maintaining journalistic integrity. I understand completely. I'll share everything I've found and work with whoever you assign to the aspects involving my mother. One more thing, Diane added. When the story publishes, we should include a disclosure note about your relationship to one of the investors, even though you didn't know about it during the initial reporting. I nodded, though the thought of publicly acknowledging my connection to Eleanor made my stomach churn. Of course, transparency is essential. With the ethical concerns addressed, I was paired with Sofia Rodriguez, another investigative reporter who would independently verify and report on any aspects involving my mother's investments. Meanwhile, I continued exploring other financial angles of the Meridian story. Working closely with Sofia required a level of personal disclosure I would have found unthinkable weeks earlier. I found myself explaining my family dynamics in professional terms, trying to maintain distance even as I revealed painful truths. So you had no knowledge of your mother's business dealings? Sofia asked during one of our first meetings. None, I confirmed. We don't discuss finances, career, or really anything substantive. Our relationship has always been complicated. Sofia nodded without pressing further, her focus returning to the documents before us. These investment patterns are interesting. Your mother's LLC began investing heavily in these specific subsidiaries 3 years ago, right when Meridian restructured. As we dug deeper, a troubling picture emerged. My mother's investments weren't just passive shareholding, they were strategically timed to coincide with major corporate decisions that had directly preceded the cost-cutting measures leading to the safety violations. While there was no evidence she had direct knowledge of the unsafe conditions, she had clearly benefited from the corporate policies that created them. This goes beyond my mother. I told Michael during a progress meeting. There's a pattern of influential local investors buying in right before problematic policy changes. It suggests either incredible luck or some form of insider knowledge. The investigation expanded to include other investors with similar patterns, connecting dots between Meridian's corporate decisions and a network of wealthy local elites who had profited from them. My mother was just one node in a larger web. One evening, working late, I received a text from Kate. Your mother knows you're still investigating Meridian. Someone from their PR department called her. She's furious. I stared at the message, wondering how the information had leaked. Had someone at Meridian connected my name to Eleanor's? Was there a source within the newspaper? My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Amber Walker speaking. Ms. Walker, this is Philip Meridian. The smooth, authoritative voice was unmistakable from the numerous interviews I had studied during my initial investigation. I think it's time we had a conversation about your ongoing interest in my company. My journalistic instincts kicked in despite my surprise. Mr. Meridian, I appreciate your call, but any comments you'd like to make should go through our official channels. I can give you the contact information for our editor. This isn't about a comment, he said, his tone hardening slightly. This is a courtesy call. Your mother is a valued investor and family friend. I would hate to see her further distressed by your crusade. The implied threat hung in the air between us. I kept my voice steady with effort. Mr. Meridian, my reporting is based on documented evidence and verified sources. My personal relationships have no bearing on that evidence. Everyone has blind spots, Ms. Walker. Family complications can cloud judgment. I'm simply suggesting you consider whether this particular story is worth the personal cost. Are you threatening me, Mr. Meridian? He laughed. A sound entirely devoid of humor. Not at all. I'm appealing to your sense of family loyalty. Something Eleanor suggests you might be lacking. The mention of my mother confirmed my suspicions. They had been in contact about me. Thank you for your concern, I said coldly. If you have any factual corrections to our reporting, please submit them formally. Otherwise, I have nothing further to discuss with you. I ended the call and immediately documented the conversation in an email to Michael and Diane. The attempt at intimidation only reinforced my determination to complete the investigation thoroughly and accurately. The final weeks of research revealed the full extent of the financial web surrounding Meridian Manufacturing. Working with data analysts and financial experts, we traced money flows, corporate decisions, and their human consequences. My mother's involvement, while significant, was ultimately just one piece of a larger pattern of problematic investment and influence. As we prepared the final draft of our investigation, I maintained a rigorous separation from the sections dealing specifically with Wright Holdings, allowing Sophia to verify and write those portions independently. The story that emerged was stronger for the additional scrutiny, documenting not just what had happened, but how it had been allowed to happen. The night before publication, Michael called me into his office. You okay with this going to print, Walker? Once it's out there, there's no taking it back. I thought about my mother, about the carefully constructed social image she had maintained for decades, about the birthday dinner designed to humiliate me for threatening that image. I thought about the workers who had been injured or killed because of corporate policies that prioritized profit over safety. I'm okay with it, I said firmly. The story is accurate, ethical, and important. Personal considerations can't factor into that. Michael nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. That's why you're a good journalist, Walker. Get some rest tonight. Tomorrow's going to be a busy day. As I left the newsroom that evening, a strange calm had settled over me. Whatever happened next, I had done my job with integrity. I had followed the evidence where it led, even when the path became personally painful. For perhaps the first time in my life, I felt entirely confident in my choices, regardless of what Eleanor Wright might think of them. The story broke at 5 a.m., when our digital edition went live with the headline, Beyond Safety Violations. The financial web behind Meridian Manufacturing's corporate decisions. My byline appeared alongside Sophia's, with a clear disclosure note about my relationship to one of the investors mentioned in the report. By 6:30 a.m., local television news was running segments about the story. By 8 a.m., national outlets had picked it up. By noon, Meridian stock had dropped 12%, and the governor had announced a formal investigation into the company's practices. The newsroom buzzed with energy as responses poured in. Whistleblowers from our original reporting called to thank us for digging deeper. Financial analysts contacted us with additional information. Competing news organizations requested interviews about our investigative process. Michael gathered the team in the conference room around 2 p.m., his typically stoic expression replaced with rare excitement. The story is getting traction beyond anything we anticipated, he announced. The SEC has opened an inquiry into potential insider trading based on our reporting. The governor's office called to request our documentation for their investigation. Walker. Rodriguez. Outstanding work. The praise felt validating, but I was distracted by my continuously buzzing phone. Though I had blocked my family members weeks ago, they had found other ways to reach me. Work email. Professional social media accounts. Even messages through colleagues. Rachel had emailed my work address. You've destroyed Mother. I hope you're satisfied with what you've done to this family. Don't bother coming to Thanksgiving. You're no longer welcome. Uncle Robert had somehow gotten hold of my editor's email, sending a rambling message questioning my mental stability and suggesting the paper should investigate my vendetta against successful business leaders. Most concerning was a voicemail from my mother left on the newspaper's main line, which the receptionist had forwarded to me with obvious discomfort. Tell Amber that her father and I are consulting with attorneys about this libelous attack on my reputation. Blood may be thicker than water, but it appears journalism ethics are thinner than either. I shared these messages with our legal department, who assured me they were merely intimidation tactics without legal merit. Our reporting was meticulously documented and verified. Truth remained the absolute defense against libel claims. By late afternoon, Kate texted, "Just a heads up, Aunt Eleanor is on the warpath. She's called an emergency family meeting tonight. Stay safe." I thanked her for the warning and turned my attention back to the public response, which was overwhelming. My professional social media accounts gained thousands of followers within hours. Interview requests piled up from podcasts, television shows, and radio programs. A prominent journalism school invited me to speak about investigative ethics. "You're handling this well," Michael commented, finding me calmly sorting through response emails. Most reporters would be bouncing off the walls with a reception like this. I smiled slightly. I've had practice maintaining composure under pressure. As evening approached, the story took an unexpected turn when Philip Meridian announced a hastily arranged press conference. The newsroom gathered around monitors to watch as the usually composed CEO appeared visibly agitated. The allegations in today's Sentinel article represent a fundamental misunderstanding of our corporate structure and investment patterns, he began, reading stiffly from prepared remarks. While we acknowledge the previously reported safety concerns and have taken steps to address them, we categorically deny any improper financial conduct or insider information sharing with investors. His prepared statement continued with standard corporate defenses, but during the question period, a reporter from a competing newspaper asked, "Mr. Meridian, can you address the specific allegations regarding Eat Right Holdings and the timing of their investments before major corporate policy changes?" Meridian's composure slipped momentarily. "I have known Eleanor Wright for decades. Any suggestion that our professional relationship crossed ethical lines is both false and potentially defamatory. No further questions." His abrupt exit from the podium only intensified media interest. Within hours, reporters were digging into Eleanor Wright's background, business dealings, and social connections. The story I had worked so hard to keep focused on corporate accountability was evolving to include a personal dimension I hadn't anticipated. Leaving work that evening, I found 3 journalists waiting near my car. "Ms. Walker, can you comment on your mother's involvement in the Meridian scandal?" one called out as I approached. "My reporting speaks for itself," I replied, falling back on media training. "The story is about corporate accountability and worker safety, not personal relationships." "But you disclosed a family connection to one of the investors," another pressed. "Was that investor your mother? Did personal motivations drive your investigation?" "The disclosure was made in the interest of transparency," I said firmly. "All aspects of the story were independently verified, including those involving any related parties." "Now, if you'll excuse me." I managed to get into my car without further comment, but the encounter left me shaken. In pursuing truth and accountability, I had inadvertently thrust my family dysfunction into the public sphere. While I didn't regret the reporting, the collateral damage was becoming more complex than I had anticipated. At home, I found a formal letter had been delivered by courier, a cease and desist from a law firm representing Eleanor Wright. demanding a retraction of defamatory statements and threatening legal action. Our legal department had prepared me for this possibility, and I forwarded the document to Diane without much concern. The reporting was solid. Intimidation tactics wouldn't change that. My phone rang, Kate calling from a number I didn't recognize. "Are you okay?" I asked immediately. "I'm fine," she assured me, using my work phone since I figured you might not answer an unknown number. The family meeting was intense. Aunt Eleanor is portraying herself as the victim of a vindictive daughter determined to destroy her reputation. That's not surprising, I sighed. The thing is, Amber, not everyone is buying it anymore. Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia are fully on her side, of course. But some of the cousins were asking questions. James actually brought up the birthday dinner and said it was pretty messed up. Even Rachel seemed uncomfortable when Eleanor started planning what sounded like a smear campaign against you. I absorbed this information with surprise. The family system had operated without challenge for so long that I hadn't considered my actions might create fissures beyond my own relationship with Eleanor. "What about you?" I asked. "Are you okay being caught in the middle of this?" Kate's laugh held little humor. "I've been the family disappointment since I chose social work over law, remember? Being associated with you just confirms their low expectations of me." After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, reflecting on the day's events. My phone continued to buzz with notifications, more interview requests, more social media mentions, more reactions to the story. Among them was an email from Michael with the subject line, "You might want to see this." Inside was a link to a television news segment. The national morning shows had picked up our story, expanding it with additional reporting on the prominent local socialite among Meridian's problematic investors. There on screen was my mother's society page photo alongside clips of Meridian workers describing unsafe conditions. The narrative was shifting in ways neither Eleanor nor I could control. What had begun as professional reporting had evolved into a public examination of power, influence, and accountability that extended far beyond my personal family drama. As public interest in the story grew, so did attempts to contact me from previously blocked family members. Eleanor apparently gave my personal address to a lawyer, who showed up unannounced the following morning. Rachel left increasingly hostile voicemails at work. Even distant relatives I barely knew reached out through professional channels to express their concern about my well-being. Through it all, I maintained my focus on the story itself, giving interviews that steered conversation back to corporate accountability and worker safety rather than family drama. When directly questioned about Eleanor Wright, I kept my responses brief and professional. All investors with concerning patterns were included in our reporting, regardless of personal connections. The facts speak for themselves. 3 days after publication, Kate texted again, "Just saw Aunt Eleanor on local news. She's playing the victim card hard." I turned on the television to find my mother giving a carefully staged interview in her immaculately decorated living room, looking appropriately distressed but dignified. As a mother, "Nothing is more painful than seeing your child turn against the family," she said, dabbing at dry eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. I've always supported Amber's career, even when I had concerns about her choices. To have that support repaid with this public attack, it's simply heartbreaking. The interviewer, clearly charmed by Eleanor's performance, asked sympathetically, "Do you think personal issues might have influenced your daughter's reporting?" Eleanor sighed dramatically. "Amber has always struggled with emotional regulation. As a child, she would lash out when she felt she wasn't getting enough attention. I'm afraid success in her career hasn't resolved those underlying issues." I turned off the television, surprisingly unmoved by the character assassination. The Eleanor who could reduce me to tears with a single cutting remark now seemed small and transparent, a woman so threatened by truth that she had to resort to public attacks on her own daughter. That evening, Michael called me at home, something he rarely did. "Just checking in, Walker. Saw your mother's performance on Channel 4. "I'm okay," I assured him, realizing with some surprise that it was true. "It's actually exactly what I expected." "The thing about hit pieces," Michael said gruffly, "is they only work when the target reacts. The SEC investigation into Meridian is gaining momentum. The governor is calling for regulatory reform. Your work is making a real difference. Keep your focus there. He was right. While Eleanor fought to control the narrative about herself, the larger story continued to unfold in ways that mattered. Workers were coming forward with new evidence. Regulators were taking action. Other journalists were building on our reporting to examine similar patterns in different industries. A week after publication, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Rachel. We need to talk." After consideration, I replied, "I'm open to conversation if it can be respectful. My boundaries regarding Mother remain firm." Her response came hours later. "I saw the full documentary evidence. Did Mother really set you up at that birthday dinner just because of your first Meridian story?" It was the first indication that Rachel might be seeing through Eleanor's manipulations. Rather than relishing the validation, I felt an unexpected sadness for my sister, who might be experiencing her own painful awakening to family dynamics. As the public story evolved, so did my private one. The professional recognition brought opportunities one had never imagined: speaking engagements, award nominations, job offers from larger publications. But more meaningful was the gradual reclamation of my own narrative, both publicly and personally. The Eleanor Wright who appeared on television, giving increasingly desperate interviews as more evidence emerged, was not the towering figure who had dominated my psyche for decades. She was simply a woman whose carefully constructed facade was crumbling under the weight of truth, a truth I had helped bring to light through nothing more complicated than doing my job with integrity. 3 months after the publication of our Meridian investigation, I stood in the grand ballroom of the Regency Hotel, adjusting my unfamiliar formal attire while trying to calm my nerves. The National Journalism Association had nominated our story for Investigative Reporting of the Year, and the awards ceremony had drawn media professionals from across the country. "Stop fidgeting," Sophia advised, appearing beside me in an elegant black dress. "You look fine, and we deserve to be here." "I know," I agreed, though my stomach remained knotted with anticipation. It's just surreal. A year ago I was covering zoning board meetings, and now you're changing how the public understands corporate accountability," she finished for me. "Own it, Walker." Michael joined us, uncharacteristically formal in a tuxedo that looked at least a decade old. "Whatever happens tonight, you two did exceptional work. The impact speaks for itself." He was right about the impact. In the months following our reporting, the SEC investigation had expanded to include multiple executives at Meridian. The state legislature had passed enhanced worker safety regulations nicknamed the Meridian Rules. Most significantly, former employees had filed a class action lawsuit using our documentation as foundational evidence. As for the personal fallout, that had evolved in ways I couldn't have predicted. Eleanor had ultimately abandoned her legal threats when her attorneys likely advised her that truth is an absolute defense against defamation claims. Instead, she had pivoted to a public relations campaign portraying herself as a passive investor who had been misled by Meridian executives. The strategy might have worked had Philip Meridian not thrown her under the bus during his SEC deposition, revealing emails showing she had been fully informed about the corporate decisions preceding the safety violations. The social standing she had spent decades cultivating had crumbled as former friends distanced themselves from the scandal. Rachel had undergone perhaps the most surprising transformation. After seeing the documentary evidence of Eleanor's financial dealings, she had reached out to me multiple times, gradually moving from defensiveness to cautious questions about our shared childhood. We had met for coffee twice, awkward, halting conversations that nonetheless represented more honesty than we had shared in years. My whole life, I thought I was the lucky one, she had admitted during our last meeting. Mother's favorite, the successful daughter. I never realized how much that role was a cage until I saw you break free of yours. Our relationship remained tentative, but for the first time, I felt hope that we might eventually build something authentic from the ruins of our manipulated past. Kate had become a regular presence in my life, our shared understanding of Eleanor creating a foundation for a deeper connection. She had been the one to help me process each new development in the family drama without being pulled back into toxic dynamics. Ms. Walker, a young event coordinator, appeared at my elbow. They're ready for you for the pre-award interview. I nodded and followed her to a small room where a videographer was set up to record brief statements from nominees. As I answered questions about our investigative process and the story's impact, I realized how much had changed in my own professional presence. Gone was the constant need for external validation that had driven me for so long. In its place was a quiet confidence in the work itself. After the interview, I checked my phone to find a text from Dr. Sanchez. Thinking of you tonight. Remember that your worth exists independent of any award or recognition. I smiled, appreciating how therapy had helped me develop this new internal compass. Our weekly sessions had evolved from crisis management to deeper exploration of identity and boundaries. I was learning to recognize Eleanor's critical voice in my head and replace it with my own more compassionate perspective. The awards ceremony proceeded with the expected speeches and video packages highlighting each nominated project. When they reached the investigative reporting category, my heartbeat accelerated despite my attempts at detachment. And the award goes to Amber Walker and Sofia Rodriguez for Beyond Safety Violations. The financial web behind Meridian Manufacturing. The room erupted in applause as Sofia and I made our way to the stage. Michael had insisted we prepare remarks just in case, and I was grateful for his foresight as I unfolded the small note card from my clutch. Thank you to the National Journalism Association for this recognition, I began, my voice steadier than I felt. This award belongs to everyone who made this investigation possible, the brave whistleblowers who first came forward, the data analysts who helped us make sense of complex financial records, our editors who supported rigorous reporting even when faced with legal threats. I paused, considering whether to acknowledge the personal dimension that had become public knowledge. Deciding on honesty, I continued, on a personal note. This story presented unique challenges as the evidence led to unexpected places, including my own family connections. I'm grateful to work in a newsroom that prioritizes truth and accountability above all else, and to have colleagues who helped ensure our reporting met the highest ethical standards. As we left the stage, congratulations poured in from journalists I had long admired. Later, at the reception, a reporter from the Washington Post sought me out. Impressive work. Especially navigating the personal complications, she said. What's next for you? I hear there are offers from some major outlets. I'm staying with the Sentinel for now, I replied. There's still important follow-up to be done on Meridian, and I value the team I work with. It was true. Despite several attractive offers, I had decided to remain at the paper that had given me the support and space to grow. Michael had created a special investigative team with Sofia and me as co-anchors, providing resources for us to pursue complex stories requiring extended research. Returning to my apartment that night, award in hand, I felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with the recognition itself. The painful birthday dinner that had catalyzed so much change now seemed like a distant memory, significant not for the humiliation it had caused, but for the boundaries it had helped me establish. The following weekend, I hosted a small gathering at my apartment, a belated birthday celebration with the people who had supported me through the turbulent months. Michael and his wife brought an expensive bottle of scotch for toasting proper journalism. Sofia arrived with her girlfriend and homemade empanadas. Kate came early to help set up, bringing books and board games. A few colleagues and newer friends completed the group. Midway through the evening, Kate pulled me aside. I have something for you, she said, handing me a small wrapped package. Consider it a very late birthday gift. Inside was a framed photo of me as a child, maybe 6 or 7 years old, sitting at a piano recital with an expression of pure joy. I had no memory of the moment. I found it in an old family album, Kate explained. It reminded me that before all the family dysfunction shaped you, there was just this, a kid who knew how to be happy. I hugged her, unexpectedly moved by the glimpse into a self I had almost forgotten. Thank you for this. And for everything else. Later, as my guests enjoyed cake and conversation, I slipped away to my balcony for a moment of quiet reflection. The city stretched before me, lights twinkling against the night sky. My phone buzzed with a text, "Rachel, thinking of you today. Happy belated birthday. Maybe dinner next week?" My treat, and I promise everyone gets a chair. I smiled at the tentative humor, a small bridge being extended. Taking a deep breath of the cool evening air, I felt something I had rarely experienced throughout my pursuit of Eleanor's approval: peace. Not the temporary calm between storms, but something more foundational, the steady certainty that I was exactly where I needed to be, becoming exactly who I was meant to become. The journey hadn't been linear, and the wounds of the past hadn't magically disappeared. But I had built something authentic and meaningful from the broken pieces, a career I was proud of, relationships based on mutual respect, and most importantly, a relationship with myself that no longer depended on external validation. Returning to my guests, I raised my glass for a toast. To chosen family, I said, looking around at the faces that had become so important to me, and to writing our own stories, not the ones others try to write for us. As laughter and conversation resumed around me, I thought about how differently this birthday had turned out from the last, not because of any grand gesture or perfect resolution, but because I had finally understood that my worth had never been dependent on a seat at Eleanor's table. I had built my own table, surrounded by people who saw me clearly and valued what they saw. Has anyone else had to rebuild their life after cutting ties with toxic family members? What was your turning point? The moment you realized things needed to change? Share your stories in the comments. If this video resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of people supporting each other through difficult family transitions. Remember, sometimes the healthiest families are the ones we create for ourselves. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to write your own.